Hello, everybody. If you ever wanted to know the presidential shifts between 1984 and 2020, that's what we're going to take a look at today. I've looked at plenty of other shifts, but today it's just going to be 84 to 20. So I've got the usual spreadsheet that I've made here. In the first column, we have the states. The next column is the 1984 Democratic vote. That's Walter Mondale. Followed by the 84 Republican vote. That is Ronald Reagan. The next column is the 2020 Democratic vote, Joe Biden. Followed by the 2020 Republican vote, Donald Trump. Then we have the Democratic shifts between those two elections, followed by the Republican shifts, and finally the last column, that is the net change between the two parties, between the two elections. And then I have my usual shading, the darkest colors, and there's going to be a lot of them. Those are over 10-point shifts. The lightest red and blue colors, those are going to be under 5-point shifts. So a little bit of brief background. 1984, that was pretty much the zenith for the Republicans. Ronald Reagan, he won re-election by a massive landslide. 49 states, 525 electoral votes, just under 59% of the popular vote. Walter Mondale, he was just no match for Ronald Reagan and the economic conditions and the issues in the country at the time. So because we're going from a super high point for the Republicans in 84 and comparing that to a Democratic win in 2020, most of these are substantial shifts toward the Democrats. So having said all that, let's not waste any time. Let's go through these states. And as always, we'll start in Alabama. In 1984, the Democratic vote, Walter Mondale, he got 38.3% of the vote. Ronald Reagan, the Republican, got 60.5%. Jump ahead to 2020, Joe Biden fell to 36.6%, and Donald Trump ticked up to 62%. That's a net loss of 1.7 from the Democrats, a net gain of 1.5 toward the Republicans, and a total net shift of 3.2 away from the Democrats and toward the Republicans. So now you know how it works, and we can go quickly through the rest of these states. Most of them are big for the Democrats, and Alaska is next, and that state went 26.8 away from the Republicans and toward the Democrats. Arizona, huge shift there, 34.2 toward the Democrats. Arkansas, that actually went back toward the Republicans by 5.4. And now we've got a ton of massive blue shifts here. First in California, that went toward the left by 45.4, one of the biggest shifts on here. Colorado did the same by 41.8, Connecticut 41.9, Delaware 38.8, Florida 27.3, Georgia 20.7, Hawaii 40.7, Idaho 15.2, in Illinois by 29.8. A lot of major shifts there toward the Democrats. Next, Indiana, that also went toward the Democrats, but by a lower amount of 8%. Iowa went slightly toward the Republicans by 0.8%. Kansas had a decent shift back toward the Democrats by 19%. Kentucky went a modest 5.3 toward the Republicans. Louisiana got a little bit bluer by 4%. And now more big shifts toward the Democrats. Maine is first, 31.1. Maryland had 38.7. Massachusetts, 36.3. Michigan, 21.8. Minnesota, less of a shift there, 6.9. And that was Walter Mondale's home state. He was able to win that back in 1984. It was a very narrow win by 0.2%, but at least he was able to win his home state. Mississippi, same direction by 7.9. Missouri as well by 4.6. Montana, 6% also toward the Democrats. Now we've got more of these same shifts. These are all over 20-point shifts toward the Democrats. First is Nebraska by 22.7, Nevada 36.3, New Hampshire a gigantic 45%, New Jersey 36.8, New Mexico 31.3, New York 31.2, and North Carolina by 22.7. The next state is North Dakota. That went back toward the Republicans by a slight 2.3%. Ohio went back toward the Democrats by 10.7. Oklahoma also toward the Democrats by 4.8. In Oregon, that went 28.3 away from the Republicans and toward the Democrats. Pennsylvania got 8.5 points bluer. Rhode Island, 24.5 points bluer. South Carolina, bluer as well by 16.3. South Dakota had almost no change, only 0.3% toward the left. Tennessee had a decent shift toward the Republicans by 7%. Texas, back toward the Democrats by 21.9. Utah, same direction, 29.4. Vermont had the biggest shift of all toward the Democrats by a whopping 52.5%. It's really only possible because Reagan won that by 17 points in 84, and then Biden won it by over 35 in 2020. Let's move on to Virginia, and that also went a huge 35.3 toward the Democrats, just as Washington did by 32.3. West Virginia hit the biggest shift toward the Republicans by 28.4. Wisconsin went just under 10%, 9.9 toward the Democrats. And the last state is Wyoming. That did go toward the Republicans but by a mere 1%. So those are all the states, but I also have Washington, D.C. on here. We know that's extremely blue, but it got 15.1% bluer between 84 and 2020. So those are all of the states and all of the shifts. And if you want to help visualize this data, we can apply it all to a map. And here it is. It's the same basic shading. The darkest colors I kept at 10 or more points. And on the other end, the very lightest colors are under 1 point shifts. Those would be the tilt margins. So 4 levels of shading. Most of them, as you can see, are very dark blue. Only one dark red state, that's West Virginia. A few states did not have much change, South Dakota and Iowa, but there's a few other states with low to mid single digit shifts. So are there any takeaways on here? Well, this is comparing one election where one party did very well to another election where another party did well enough, and it's over a 36-year span, so it's not the most compelling data, but it does show you where we were in the mid-80s, all the way through 3 to 4 decades later. There's just so much dark blue on here, and many of those shifts were 20 or even 30-point shifts, that it's really hard to parse out a lot of takeaways. Reagan just won in such a massive landslide that this is what you'd see comparing any two elections like this. I guess Republicans did their best in more of the southern states, but there's not a whole lot of red there. It's just not the kind of map you want to look at if you want to see a lot of Republican shifts. But the good news for the Republicans is these shifts are so massive because Reagan did so well and Walter Mondale did so poorly in '84. The better you do in one election, the more you set yourself up to drop off in the next election. So I will leave it there for now. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about any of the shifts in any of these states? Let me know down below. On your way out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching. I will see you on the next video.